just do some things that, and we knew he could do, but I don't think a lot of people realize just how talented this kid is. Now, how's it going to translate against more athletic teams? How's it going to transfer? Is he going to be able to put it behind his back and tack the paint against Houston? Probably not. But I mean, so, but these are things that we live, you're going to learn as you go. I thought, and I think it was good to kind of get, I thought Wagler, for all the hype about, him, I thought he was a little bit, I thought he was good. He looked good and smooth and fluid and everything. I thought he was tentative a little bit, at times. And so this is why they needed to be out there, though, right? In front of a large crowd and playing a game. And nobody cared about the outcome because both teams were missing guys. But at the end of the day, it was really good. But I think perhaps the most impressive thing was Stojakovic did about a 30-minute warm-up or workout with one of the basketball managers. And I know the basketball manager said he was exhausted at the end, but I thought Stojakovic looked really good running and jumping and shooting and everything. So, it's I think that's a positive down the road because they really need to add some depth on the wing. I think front court, when Tommy will be back, I think he'll be back playing next week and at Florida. And I think it's pretty exciting to see what they can be with this group. I know offensively they're going to score. Now, and they're making strides defensively. I think they showed some versatility. So, yeah, I guess that's a long headline, though, Mike.
Yeah, that's a long headline, but Brad, some people like to have a full-page headline. So, Ked, coming out of this game, what were your thoughts? Top line.
Well, I'll give you my headline, then I'll give you my story later. Illini dominates the Redbirds -3 starters. That's what I'll go with. And I know Illinois State was missing players, but I don't think it would have mattered. Personally, I was just surprised from a report that I had received before. This is David Markovic. I know the pronunciation is going to be somewhere along those lines, but he was. Here's the thing: before yesterday's game, and before I received some information about the practice report, I thought it was good. Robbie Hummel loved him in that Nike All-Star game. He really did, which we all saw. And then I heard he was kind of struggled a little bit and was kind of slow-footed and, wasn't much of a scorer. Then yesterday he had a breakout game. My thing moving forward with him is this. Nobody had a scouting report on him. The scouting report is tough once the conference starts. But you still can't take away the fact that the way he rebounds, the way he makes layups, and he's going to have open looks from threes because they're not going to have a guard guarding him. When I look at this team, I'm going to challenge people listening, even YouTube. Is there a team out there that can literally start all 5 guys that can shoot threes? Because this team is going to have all 5 guys that can shoot threes, all of them, and shoot them effectively, not just throw them up. So I was just in all the offense. I think they guarded pretty well yesterday. I think ISU made some tough shots. I mean, and they're picked, they're one of the they're picked, to win the league. So I was impressed yesterday, and people can say, oh, it was a mid-major program. Sometimes you lose those games. So, I know we're just diving into this, but I was really encouraged with what I saw yesterday from a lot of guys.
So I'm going to say, I want to, your guys, Brad can talk a little bit about this as well, but watching Markovic play on videotape, he's very solid. I don't think anybody can argue that, but he's almost so solid that he's a little bit robotic. And so and look, when training, the Europeans are very disciplined in how they train for basketball. They don't do as many games. They train small motions so that you don't waste any motion, because they know that maybe when they play in international competition, they may not be the most athletic. So you can't waste a lot of time. Kind of like the Tom Cruise, when he first started running in movies, it was like this. Well, nobody fast runs like this. And then all of a sudden you notice now as an older guy, he's been trained not to waste any motion. And so they do that a lot in European basketball practice. And my son's had opportunities to get trained by some guys in Atlanta, Georgia, when we lived down there, who were very big on no wasted effort. So, Brad, what did you think of Merkovich in terms of, how he looked, how fluid he was, foot speed. What were your thoughts?
Well, here's the thing. It's another example. I think his foot speed is better than you think. He's pretty fluid, smooth. He's not a great leaper. I mean, there's no way you're not going to look at him and go, wow, he's a high flyer. But he is so good at using his body and being physical. And when you weigh 255 pounds, you can get people on your hip. You don't have to jump quite as high to be effective. And that's what he does. But I think he's plenty athletic. Now, are there going to be matchups when he's going to maybe face a 4-man who is explosive, again, like a guy who's at Houston or a guy, something like that? I mean, but you can see where, how about him in that Damask role as a guy who you run ISOs for, and you back it down and you kind of ISO him, and he's such a good passer that offensively he can be amazing. I think he can be fantastic offensively. I think he'd be very difficult to guard on the offensive floor. Now, there are going to be guys who are out-athlete him, and maybe draw some fouls or whatever. And I think that's where he's going to get better. And this is true of all those freshmen. You gotta learn not to foul, right? You can't put your hands on when you get this. Underwood talked about that post game, but that's a normal progression. We know that's a thing. But I really like what he brings, and I could see him literally being a guy who closes out games at the power forward. I don't know if he's going to start. I don't know who's going to start. I mean, I don't know that they know who's going to start, like, officially. I mean, I don't know if they know they're going to start the two big guys because they said they would. I don't know if they're going to start Humrickhouse 3, 4, whatever. But I will say that Merkovich is going to play big minutes, and he's going to be impactful in that role. And I could see them, man, the way college basketball is with those, those booty ball. He could be a booty ball guy, ISO guy. He just throwing the ball and back him down. You saw him do that the other day. And if you get a mismatch, especially, and there's your thing, you get a team that switches, immediately you get a mismatch, throwing the ball and see what happens. And you saw him even run as the ball screen handler, and you put a guard on him. Guard sets the ball screen now, or you put him in there with another big. You're creating mismatches there. So, I mean, there's a lot of offensive capabilities there, but I think he's good enough defensively from positioning and his strength and things to still be okay. I'm not you're not going to look at him and say, man, this guy's so crazy athletic and in passing lanes, all those things. But you're going to see a guy who can do some really good things, and he can be a positional defender, which you don't have to be a good defender. You don't have to be a great individual defender. You can be a good individual defender, do things fundamentally right, and always be in the right location and still be a good defender.
Yep, totally there. But Ked, you obviously were one who's been looking to see how these new players that we don't have much information on how they look. What were your thoughts?
Well, going back to David here real quick, Merkovic, I've not mentioned this to anybody. I don't know what people think. I'm throwing it out there. And the person who gave me this information, somebody I trust. I really trust. It's a coach. So it's not like it's somebody who just, talking. But we look at his athleticism. And I can never judge what the NBA likes. I don't know. I think I know, and they say what they know. But I know last week there was 2 NBA teams, and they're looking at him last week. And when I say that, I'm thinking people are probably laughing at me, but that's what was told to me. But I also will say this. He surprised everybody, and he's not overly quick, and maybe they don't need him to be that way. I think he's going to be a very, very effective college basketball player if he continues to do what he did yesterday. Like I said to you, and he's not going to, dunk like Kofi. I don't think that's part of his game. But I think he's crafted enough of it himself to where he understands how to be effective and how to score. And you add the 3-ball to it, which I think a lot of people like, and maybe why NBA teams are there, is because he can do that and because he's young. Brad mentioned about starting. I don't know. I know the coach has got to be thinking about it. I don't know who's going to start. You look at the freshmen. It's tough to say this, and I don't want to say this, but when you look at this team, the minutes that were played yesterday, they're not going to be the same when everybody returns. And I know Brad mentioned that he loved Brandon Lee. He reminded him of Andre Felice, but I think his minutes will be really cut when they come back. And I know they like Keaton. So I don't know, but those minutes are going to look a lot different, once you get Stojakovic back and Milo and Biggie Beasic. And I don't know, I've been sitting here just the whole night just thinking, who could you start? Because one of the guys I think could start, they can't because you only start 5 people. But there are 6 guys that I could say should be starters on that team.
Just throw 6 out there and see if they notice.
It's worth a shot. I mean,
Big Ten refs are not that good. It may be halfway through the game that they figure that out. As we look at this team, what do you think about the bigs? We obviously only saw we didn't see Tomislav. How do we think this? How do we think they're going to do that? Or is Underwood keeping that under wraps? Or is he going to do a match up to the other team, cause problems? How do you see that? Because I think having 2 guys over 7 foot who can both shoot threes is a little bit of a kid in a candy store for a basketball coach.
Well, for sure. And I think they've talked about playing those guys together. We'll see what happens there, but at the end of the day, I'm not sure how feasible that is for long periods of time. I'm not saying it won't happen.
Right.
But here's the thing. If you get a mismatch, in the past, we used to talk about how when Damask was running his booty ball, they would always leave like a Ty Rogers or somebody who wasn't known as a shooter, right?
Yep.
Imagine leaving your 7-foot 3-point shooter who's going to shoot 38% from 3 on, there. You can't do that, right? You can't double with that. Or you've got, depending on who's out there. So I think that those bigs being able to space the floor really changed things. Now, think about Kylan Boswell getting downhill against his guy and using his strength. If the big has to stay out and stay connected with his guy, it makes it so easy. It gives him lanes to get in the paint and use that strength. And, he got really good at the end of the year getting to the line and finding ways to do that. So I really like having those stretch bigs. Now, I would like to see them get to the rim a little more, see Tomislav do some things inside as well. The other thing I would say this, I thought Zvonimir, Big Z, we'll just call him Big Z. He is such a presence defensively. He is so long, and when he's in the paint, man, on the defensive end, he makes a huge impact there. And I think that's something, although Tommy is 7 foot, he doesn't have the same defensive impact, I don't think, the Big Z does. So, I mean, that's a game-changing thing because you're always looking for rim protection, right? This is what we talk about. Got to protect the rim. Man, if you get that, that could immediately make your defense a little bit better.
I'll tell you, for me, I don't know. I just said, I don't know what the lineup's going to be, but me personally, I want to see them both in the lineup. I don't know if you could tell on TV how long Zvonimir is. That kid is long. He is tall. The reason why I think this is, throwing it out there, I think it'll work is because, one, even though he looks like he's 7'15", he doesn't want anything to do with the post. I mean, you think about it, he didn't shoot a free throw yesterday. He was the tallest guy on the court, and he shot threes, and he mentioned last night in the post-game press conference he was a little disappointed. The percentage wasn't what he thought it was going to be. And, Mike, that is a huge matchup problem because if you worry about the defense, because Brad just mentioned, and I agree with him, I think he's good defensively, and Tomislav is he's a much more effective post player. I know they said, during media day that they worked on his post game, and he said he's gotten stronger. He was on campus this year the entire summer, where if you think about last year, he came in late. Conditioning wasn't there, wasn't as strong. And I mean, he's definitely a lot bigger than Zvonimir. But when you look at putting them together, you have 2 7-footers out there that can shoot the ball. And I mentioned a lineup with a bunch of guys that can shoot it. If you have Stojakovic out there, you have David out there with them, you have Kylan Boswell, Milo, they can all shoot it. I mean, you pick your poison. I would like to see that lineup because I think that's going to cause problems for people. And I think, by having Z out there, who's one of the best pick and pop shooters in the country, I think teams are going to have a hard time defending that. And people are worried about what do you have coming off the bench. Well, you take one out, then you bring in David, or if David starts, whatever. But I like to see those two out there together personally. But just the depth is impressive alone. It's a good problem to have.
How did Ben Humrickhouse look? We know he's coming off of an engagement to Illini gal Adalia McKenzie. So congratulations to the couple. Of course, we've had Adalia was on Sports Spectacular for 2 years. We really, maybe 3 years.
Three,
yeah.
Mike.
And so we really enjoyed her. But on the basketball court, how's Ben looking?
I like Ben. I think he does some good things. I think the thing you're seeing him, they used him as kind of a 3. I think there are matchups where he can do that. I think that consistently he's going to be kind of the stretch 4, but he'll be in the mix. The one thing he's a veteran guy, and he is so comfortable. I had a great chance to interview him on our Big Ten Media Days. That interview will be on our radio show this week, Illini Guy Sports Spectacular. And he's so comfortable in his skin this year. Just he knows what he wants. He knows what he's doing. He understands the step up, and he talked about how difficult that step up in competition was. A lot of times, you don't say that during the season and say, "Oh, I can't handle this step up in competition." You're just going through and you're battling, you're fighting through it. But after the season, you reflect and go, "It was a lot harder than I thought," and that's what he did in this interview that I had with him, and I was very impressed with his ability to kind of have perspective and be in retrospective here and understanding what was difficult and how it made him how he's able to battle through it and so forth. And he got better as the year went on. I think he's going to take this in. Confidence is such a huge part of this game, and he has it right now. And and also we got to add the congratulations to him and Adalia. I want to make sure I get that in there because that's very cool. He told me at Big Ten Media Days, and I posted on Illini Guys, I said, "Hey, he and Adalia have a big surprise coming up." He said, "I got big news. Can't share it yet, but I have big news." And we knew what it was, but so it was pretty cool and to see that, and he was very excited.
Two of the nicest people you could ever run into.
Oh, fantastic! Their kids are pretty good too.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. You know what? I'll leave with this. Brad's right. He's really confident and seems like a different person. I just don't know. I think he's better coming off the bench. That's my opinion. I think they have enough firepower. I don't think it would hurt his feelings. I don't think, people can say, well, he should start because I don't know if he's one of the best 5 players. I don't think they need a role player. He's not a Lucas Johnson type guy. I don't see that. I think there's not a lot of pressure on him to start because if you say you started David or Zanamir and they're producing, why not? Because if you start Ben, and he's, not putting up 10, 12, 14 points a game, then you have the whole thing when people start beating down his confidence. And we can say it doesn't matter, but he's human. And I just think when you look at this roster, he would be a guy I would like to have come off the bench. And you're right, he's very, very confident. When I look at him, I don't know. When I look at him, for some reason, this is hard to figure out. Other than booty ball, I think he just doesn't flow with the offense. Things don't come easy for him, in the offense. And I don't know what that is. Maybe it's him putting too much pressure on himself. I know he did say he was going to just jack in a bunch of threes. But yesterday I saw him, like I said, be aggressive in the post. And he was mad a couple of fouls weren't called on time. They were eventually called. But I'm not saying a knock on him, and I'm just giving my honest opinion. I think he'd be better suited coming off the bench with this team, in my personal opinion.
Yeah, the fan base can be a little tough when they have expectations or they have some preconceived notions. Well, what are we thinking here? Is there any insight that the coaches have? I don't know if they have a line of sight at all on if Petrovic is going to be what that timeline looks to be approved. Is there been any type of indications on this that he could be nearing NCAA approval?
I'll take the lead. I asked yesterday. I just did, and the response I got was kind of surprising because when I asked about the NCAA, I got the injury. So maybe he is. Maybe they know. I'm not saying that he is. I don't want people to go run with that. But they were more concerned about his ankle tweak and his hamstring. So maybe it's going to come up sooner. It's going to happen sooner than what you think. I personally thought it was going to happen last week. Excuse me. I was surprised that it didn't, that there was no announcement. But why make the announcement if he couldn't play? So maybe when he's healthy, and maybe they know, because they don't know, it does a good job of protecting their athletes and not putting certain things out there. But I was also told they'd be very, very surprised if he's not ready by the first true, not exhibition game, but first game of the season.
Brad, you got anything on that, or did you not get around that subject?
No, I think I think there's the expectation is he'll be cleared before the end of October, but I don't know. But they don't really know because there's you don't know. I mean, but that's the expectation, which would be make him, like Ked mentioned, ready for that first game. They've all had some, he's had some nagging things, but he's been working out, doing some practicing and stuff. So, he's just maybe not 100% at the moment. So maybe it's good time to have him rest a little bit. And it doesn't actually matter what happens in the exhibition games. I know everybody was so excited if they could beat Florida next Saturday, but at the end of the day, it does not matter. And so it'd be very intriguing to see when he does get cleared. And the cool thing is they've been, a lot of people say, well, it's not like he hasn't been practicing. He hasn't been learning the system. So he's been around. So it's not, even though he's not cleared, he just can't play in the exhibition games and the games. He can still practice, do all those things. So he's doing that. And so it's been, it'll be good, I think, when he gets back. I expect them. I also expect, based on what we saw from Stojakovic, obviously he has to get cleared medically and make sure everything's cleared, but I would expect him. I don't expect him to play against Florida, but I expect him to play in the first real game, or in that first week of real games, if it's not the first one. I just think those guys will be ready to go, and this is going to be a little bit different team. The only guy I don't see playing early in the season is Ty Rodgers. It's going to be a bit for him.
Hey, you got his name right. You got his name right. I liked how he put that on the end of the pronunciation video. Finally, after all these years.
Tyvich Rajovic. So, I don't know.
So, guys, Delete Me makes it easy, quick, and safe to remove your personal data online at a time when surveillance and data breaches makes everyone vulnerable. Data brokers make a profit off of your data. Your data is a commodity that anyone on the web can buy, including your private details. This can lead to identity theft, phishing attempts, and even harassment. So now you can actually protect your privacy with Delete Me. And of course, one of the things that we always ask people is, have you ever been a victim of identity theft, harassment, or doxing? If you haven't, you may know somebody who is. Delete Me can help. Take control of your data and keep your private life private by signing up for Delete Me now at a special discount for our listeners. Get 20% off your Delete Me plan when you go join deleteme.com/HIT and then use promo code HIT at checkout. The only way to get 20% off is to go to join deleteme.com/HIT and enter code HIT at checkout. That's joindeleteme.com/HIT, code HIT. So thank you so much there for the Delete Me, folks. If you get an opportunity, go there and see if this will help you out. One of the things I think that somebody wrote on here that I think is really interesting from a standpoint of comments is we got this, and I think the best time to be alive is an Illini ILL. And certainly I would actually say that this rivals what was going on in the 80s and has the opportunity to maybe elevate above what happened in the 80s, but that's going to be hard. But boy, is this incredible when you can go ahead and get these type of things where your football team is in the top 25, your basketball team's in the top 25. How do you guys feel on where this time ranks in your Illini fandom?
Man, I go back to the 80s, late 80s as we're going into what's 89, Makovic, you go to the Final Four, you got you're going into 90. I mean, I thought that was the peak time. There's always something that gets in the way, though. You know what I mean? Like, it seems like Illinois always seems to run into something, whether it's, the Deion Thomas thing or, Makovic leaving or all that kind of stuff. And then we had to deal with Lou Tepper. But great human being. Actually, a pretty good football coach, but not a great,
pretty good defensive coordinator.
Defensive coordinator should have said that, but so there's a lot of, but yeah, I would put this time right there. It's always fun to have both programs like relevant, and they're relevant nationally. Like the Illinois football team still has a legitimate shot. They're going to be they're a dog at Washington, but it's like 4.5, right? If you win that game, you're going to be favored the rest of the season, I think. Although Northwestern does look like a juggernaut right now at the end. But
good Lord, what happened to them?
I know. But probably you're going to be favored the rest of the way if you win at Washington. If you go 10-2 and your only losses are number 1 and number 2, that's a pretty good resume. You know what I mean? That's a pretty good resume for Illinois.
If only number 2 hadn't flushed quite so hard.
It was bad. And so... But then you look at the other side, basketball team, they're a legit team. Like, people are putting them as sleeper team to make the Final Four. They're a legit top 20 team. I think they could be higher. I don't know. The preseason's tough. That's a really tough schedule. But if they win a couple of those games, as I expect them to, suddenly that resume looks fantastic, because they opened the Big Ten season with a bunch of winnable games, a chance to really get on the national radar. And who knows? I mean, this becomes like a top 10 team and a top 5 team. I don't know. And, what's your seeding in like? And you look at the NCAA tournament. I know this is way in the tournament. Remember in 2005, they went Indianapolis, Chicago, St. Louis.
Yep.
It's conceivable this year they could be in a similar, like Indianapolis, Chicago, St. Louis, different order. But they could be in that same thing if they're one of the protected seeds. And we know how Illini Nation travels. Could be almost three home game atmospheres, 3 venues. So that would be pretty cool.
This is one of the better times. Brad mentioned the late 80s, early 90s. The difference, I think, is social media. I think social media has made it much more prevalent. I mean, there's so much more out there for people to see. I remember growing up, when I was an adult, when I first kind of got into this business, you had to go online, and Dave Kaplan was a guy. You had to buy the subscription. You got it in the paper, and Roy and Harv Smith. So it was hard to get that information from people, and then it was just different. Now everything's online. I mean, if you want to subscribe to Illini Guys, which I wish everybody listening to this podcast continues to do or would do, I think that has a lot to do with it. But I think the difference, Brad mentioned this too as well, there's always something that went wrong. I think that had a lot to do with the coaches. I think the coaches that are here right now, and in the program, I think they're here for the long haul. I think they have to be fired, or one of them will have to retire. I don't see that happening like in the next 2 or 3 years, but it is a good time because it's different. You just have a different feeling. We're all around the same age, and we've all seen things go wrong. And what's weird,
Mike's much older than me. I don't want to worry about that.
I put a Twitter post out there.
Got a few months on KED too, so let's keep that down.
Well, I think I'm older than all 3 of you. I don't know. Maybe I could be wrong.
No, I could. I'm willing to bet you money I'm older than you, KED.
Okay.
How much money you want to put on this?
You want a pizza? I'll take some. I'll take you. But but anyway, I tweeted today how much times have changed, and I don't know. I was hoping somebody would finally give me an answer. Illinois has a basketball commitment from the state of Iowa. That's how much times have changed, and I mean, you just look at the narrative that would have never ever happened before. And when I interviewed the kid, and one of the first things I did, I mentioned that, and his parents started laughing because they were sitting next to him. So it is a good time. I mean, they're national, they're global, they're recruiting at a higher level. I know a lot of people are really paying attention to how they do football recruiting. Football recruiting is the best it's been in a long time. Do they need to get a lot better with it? Yes. I think personally, I think the transfer portal or how they get kids in can fix some of that. But I think right now it's much easier to sell. You know, when I talked to recruits, I talked to a kid from Paducah, Kentucky about 2 weeks ago. He was one of the best receivers in the country. And you would think he was ready to commit to Illinois 2 weeks ago.
That's so because of Hank. Hank Beatty.
You know, so things are different. And it's okay. And I think some people are just afraid of something bad going to happen. Some things are going to. I mean, like the Indiana loss, that was surprising to me. But I agree with Brad. I think, to me, I was the one guy worried about the schedule all season, number one. I will admit that. I think if they win Saturday and they do win, I think they're getting to the college playoffs. Because here's why. Other teams are going to lose. But I know Illinois fans are not going to want to hear this when I say it. It would be nice from a PR standpoint and school standpoint, but I don't know if I want to get in the playoffs. We've seen what happened when they play the number one or two teams in the country. I think some of those teams are great, and I think Illinois is good. If they get in the college playoffs, I don't want to see them get beat by 50. I think that's bad. So there's a double-edged sword. You win Saturday. I think that's one of the biggest games on the schedule. Ohio State was what Ohio State was. We thought Indiana, we didn't know. But to me, on the road, I do think Illinois is going to come to play. They needed a bye week and they needed the rest, but
this is, in my opinion, this is the biggest game for Illinois in a long, long time because, as you guys say, there is an opportunity to run the table, and if Illinois goes 10-2, you've got a darn good shot of being one of those top teams. The only problem is, and this is something I think the Big Ten really has to figure out, is how they get a better week-to-week schedule. There's just so many of the good teams that aren't playing each other enough. Versus like when you look at the SEC, there's like 3 big matchups every week. Now, part of it's because they're overrated because they all get in the top. Apparently, national polls, you have to have like 7 of them in the top 10 to start the season. But the bottom line is I would like to see, like, for example, there's a ton of 5-2 teams. Hopefully they'll start banging into each other so we can see there's six teams with, there's 6 games with teams that have 5 or more wins coming up this weekend. It's going to be pretty cool. But this game for Illinois, this one means a lot because you lose it. Three losses with one of them being a 53-point loss, probably not going to get you into the CFP. But 2 losses, I think Illinois could make it in.
Well, hey, let me ask you guys: was it? And I really don't know, but I thought I heard of someone on a national show. If the Big Ten is going to get 4, if their top 4 teams making the college playoffs, is that right, or did I not hear that right? They said no matter who the top 4 teams are in the Big Ten, that's who they'll get college playoff spot. Is there any truth to that?
Not this year. There's no automatic qualifiers this year. The Big Ten was hoping to get 4 from the Big Ten and 4 from the SEC because what the Big Ten would then do is probably they would have a 1 versus 2 with both teams going into the CFP, and then they would have a 3 versus what? A 3 versus 5 and a 4 versus 6 or something like that to get or 3 versus 6 and a 4 versus 5. And then those 2 teams that win those 2 games would be part of the 4 Big Ten qualifiers. So they would essentially have their own mini tourney almost, which obviously I would probably watch those games. So they would have me suckered into those 3 games. But right now it's kind of, it's going to be an at-large basis, which I think to be honest, you could make a case that the Big Ten and the SEC out of the 12, if you're really going to go with the top teams, they might have 10 of the top 12 teams. I don't know if you guys feel any different about that.
That the Big Ten and SEC have 10 of the top 12 teams?
They're somewhere in that range,
I would agree with that.
Nobody else wants. All the other conferences get all
you
mad.
got, here's the thing. Is Georgia Tech. Georgia Tech looks really good. Do you believe Georgia Tech is one of the top 10 teams in the country? I mean, and here's the thing. I'll say this. Even if Illinois goes 10-2 and they may get in the playoff, I probably still don't think they're one of the 10 best teams in the country. I mean, I'm not trying
Probably
to be
not.
It's great. I mean, they will have 10 best. They will get in as based on one of the top 10 teams, but that doesn't mean they're one of the 10 best teams because it's different.
Right, I agree with that. Well, and look, the bottom line is
I'm going to tell you right now. I'm not sure Illinois is more talented than USC, but they beat them head to head.
Yeah, they beat them head to head, and to be honest with you, you take out a really bad call, and that game turns into an easier game.
Or you take out two. Just don't fumble twice on your own going in for touchdowns. They win by 14 points. I mean, it's just simple things. But, so I don't know. And I do want to be in the college football playoff. I don't care if you get beat. You saw Indiana.
Yeah, they got beat last year, and they're fine.
They turned out okay. So I'm not worried about them, But if you're in, I mean, boy, that would be a statement for Brett Bielema in recruiting world. Look, we are in. We are one of the top 12 teams in the country. Now, are you? I don't know, but man, that would be a great sell. Although I will say this: go 9-3 and make a New Year's Day bowl, or going down I saw the ReliaQuest Bowl in Tampa. That's one option. I'm going to be in Orlando, so I'd prefer they go to Orlando if I have to choose. But hey, whatever.
You can't make it from Orlando to Tampa.
I probably could. I think I could get over there. I'd find a way, right? So no, I just think
we're going to do a movie about how you overcame the bowl. The bowl.
I overcame bowl problems. I'm sorry, I had to go all the way from Orlando to Tampa.
Wow, that's a story.
Rough life, man. It's a rough life I lead.
But I don't know how you feel on that, kid. But do you think Brad could make it?
I'm sure he could.
So the other thing I wanted to talk about, it's not basketball, but it's been interesting, as people watch this Penn State opening. Matt Rule was like a guy everybody thought had possibilities, and then all of a sudden, he gets just creamed by Minnesota. Is there any chance PJ Fleck, who's had Minnesota about as good as they've been, in 20 years, is there any chance he uses this to get a bigger job and get out of Minnesota, where I'm not certain he can ever get more than what he's got out of that job?
Yeah, there's a ceiling, right? I think there's a ceiling at Minnesota. The ceiling's higher at Penn State. I think that's a legitimate possibility. I don't know if Matt Rule's not the answer, right? I mean,
no, he's not the answer. He's the same that they just got rid
James
of, but at a lower level.
Happens to be farther to the west.
Yeah,
right now. I mean, I don't know. I really feel like this is another example of I just don't like what I have, so I'm going to pay $50 million because I want to win a national title, and this isn't good enough. It's just like it's like this petulant child throwing a fit. And I get it. You want to win, and everybody wants to win a national title, but at the same time, like, I think you really have to find a way to manage this a little bit better. And that's why you don't give these massive, I don't know. I guess you don't give these massive contracts with these massive buyouts if you want to be successful.
Here's what I would. Go ahead, kid.
I'm going to tell you right now. That's Penn State. Neither of those two are good enough to me to take their job. They're not knocking the socks off.
Okay, but then who is?
So when you look all across the country, whether it be SEC country, I don't know. Some of the jobs going to come open. But why would you? To me, that's a step backwards. I mean, I just don't see.
Oh, I agree.
Because because that job it's one of the top 10 jobs, 12 jobs in the country. There's no way if somebody quits or they try to buy someone out, there's no way because so let's look at Matt Rule from Nebraska. he's been average. I mean, they got ranked and then they got beat again. You know, PJ Fleck is great. That's not going to survive. I mean, granted, I think Penn State's attractive because you could get talent to recruit. I just think that's a powerhouse job, like with Ohio State. You know, you're not just going to just hire some guy, because I'll tell you the truth.
Ohio State just hired an offensive coordinator who had never been a head coach.
Well, true. And then you look at
here's
Michigan.
a question for you. Is Penn State going to be best job open?
Depends on your perspective and where you want to live in the country and some other things.
To me, what you guys mentioned, I mean, let's be honest, the best two conferences are the Big Ten and the SEC, bottom line. And some of the jobs are better than others. They just are. And so, but if you have an opportunity to go to a Penn State, Ohio State, or Michigan, that's a game changer. Recruiting is easier. The fan base is outstanding. You have all the resources that you possibly need. To me, I look at the conference in tiers. I look at the Michigan, Ohio State, Penn State, and Oregon in tiers, and that's how I feel.
I think those are the top 4 programs in the Big Ten. Indiana's got to be right there now with Signetti. I mean, it
doesn't have the staying power yet, but you have to say the last.
They're winning. I just don't know long term.
NIL,
well,
they
NIL,
have NIL that makes them a different animal.
Yep.
Okay. But here's my thought. I get that, but Penn State's great. It's a great job. Not going to debate that. I think Florida does a better job. The recruiting areas, you saw what Urban Meyer did at Florida. I think Florida's a better job. So you may not have the best job on the market this year. You know what else is a better job that could come open?
What's that?
LSU. What if Brian Kelly, they finally are tired of him? They get rid of him.
You know what? That's a good question, because I'm really curious. I mean, those are good. See, those are good history programs, but so is Penn State. I can see Florida. I don't know about LSU. Maybe I'm reaching here, but I still think when you look at the top 10 programs, Penn State's one of them as well.
People have said Mike Elko, because of his Northeast background, would be a target at Texas A&M. And of course,
you're undefeated.
I know, but Elko, of course, has also told people where he was at that he wasn't going to leave and then left. So maybe he's one. You know who I would ask? And I would make him tell me no. I'd call Caleb
Urban Meyer.
I'd call Caleb DeBoer down at Alabama, because those fans were willing to they wanted him run out of town on a rail after that loss at FSU. Now they like him because he's the first SEC team ever to win 4 ranked games in a row. But the fact of the matter is, as soon as he loses a game, it's, "You're not Nick Saban." You wonder if he would be happier at a school that's got a ton of money. It may not be Alabama, but they're dang close. And you don't have that hate type of thing as soon as you lose a game. I don't know that any fan base, even when Saban would lose a game, they would be all freaked out, like, what's going on with Nick? Is he slipping? I wonder how happy DeBoer is down there at Alabama.
Right, I like the Urban Meyer hire, baby. I'll tell you what, that's a game changer.
If he can stand from a health standpoint, and
then
who
cares? I mean, you only need him for a few years. I mean,
as long as he doesn't drop dead on the sidelines, there
doesn't die on the sideline. I mean, he
that's
can
win 3 or 4 years. Ooh, that's a game changer.
If he's there 3 or 4 years, you probably win. You may win a national title in those 3 or 4 years. I think Urban's that good.
Mike,
keep him out of the campus bars, and he'll be great. Then, so here's another one. How about this? Here's my out of the box hire. Dabo Swinney. Has he run his course at Clemson?
It certainly appears as though, but you got to get commitment. He's going to try to at least dabble in the portal.
But I think it's amazing how unhappy they are with Clemson, with what he's done there. I mean,
I agree with you totally.
It's insane. But clearly it's not working out. But he's a guy, you could sell Dabo Swinney going to Penn State, right?
Oh, I certainly. The one who intrigues me.
Isn't Jim Harbaugh about ready to leave his job? He's due, isn't he?
Or maybe you get John. But the thing about the thing that interests me most about PJ Fleck is he's never had the dollars behind him. I think he's a little bit overboard for me, a little over the top for me.
Yeah.
But you wonder what he would do if he was resourced. I write in tomorrow's heat checks and Hail Marys, when they tell the scores and they put the scores up, what I'd like him to see is, like, instead of number 1, Ohio State, 10 points, number 2, Indiana, 7. I'd like him to say number 1 and then put 40.0 for the millions they're spending on their roster, and then put Ohio State. And then let's say Indiana's number 2, 35 million, just making up numbers, folks. And do that for teams so we have some transparency. The other guy that I think could be really good is Eli down at Missouri, because he's put together some solid teams.
Yeah.
And Missouri doesn't have the resources. And so what I'm trying to figure out, and you're always trying to figure out when you hire somebody, you get the right fit. But what you really have to extrapolate at an Ohio State or a Indiana now, or a Georgia or Alabama, is how is this guy going to spend more money than he's ever had before? Is he going to make wise decisions, or is he not? Because think about it. If you bring in a wide receiver from somewhere else and he's the highest paid player on the team, maybe you upset the locker room for all the guys who've been committed and stayed there, and now they're upset. I mean, I think you would love to have more money to spend on your roster, but I think it does provide some headaches that might be kind of hard to deal with, for a guy who's not had the resources before.
Mike, I want to, if you don't mind, St. Dominic made a comment, and I agree with him wholeheartedly about Indiana called lightning on a bottle. I personally think this: if Brett Bielema had unlimited resources, how good would he be? I don't think I'll say it, this part I would back. I don't think he's a better coach than Brett Bielema. I think he, like he said, called lightning in a bottle. He got good talent. I don't think that's sustainable either. Not long term. We can talk about them being good right now because they are dominant and they deserve every bit of the ranking that they get. I don't think that's sustainable to Indiana. Maybe I'm wrong, but again, you give the resources to Brett Bielema that some of these schools have.
But that's the point of this, though. This is the part that people don't get about Cignetti. First off, he's won everywhere he's been, and he went up the ladder the old style way. But the thing that he did is, they've got Eli Lilly money. They've got Mark Cuban money. They've got a bank chain there. And supposedly, I don't know if this is true, but Indiana insiders have told me that he personally was the guy who got Cuban to give money to the football team. No idea if that's true, but if it is, that's just another feather in his cap. But I think Cignetti, you give him, I mean, I can't see that flame burning out in less than 5 years. He's going to have a ton of money there, so he can fill his roster back up. I think he's going to be a force for at least 3 or 4 more years. I don't know, Brad. What do you think?
I don't know, man. I don't know. I don't.
It's tough, isn't it? It's tough because he could, but you still think it's Indiana, and you think it's going to even the stuff out.
I think he's a great football coach.
I really do. So I think he's top 3 in the country.
But I do think I question whether I think Indiana can win the national championship this year. I really do.
I agree.
It's funny. I'm while we're watching here, I'm searching. I'm looking at like for coaches. What about Kyle Whittingham?
Oh, I love him.
I think he's a great coach.
Put him at one of these places for 5 years. Oof.
I think he'd win big. I mean, I like Dan Lanning. I think he's good at Oregon.
I don't think he has no reason to go anywhere because his office is made of money.
Does Lane leave?
You know what? Supposedly the Ole Miss is trying to put together some monster contract to keep him there. I don't know if they can give enough. I don't know if they have enough NIL funds, if they can match Florida, who's not been one of the top spenders. Maybe it's just as easy to stay where you're at.
I don't know. Indiana's in trouble though this weekend. They're playing UCLA, who's like on a heater.
Yeah,
Right.
well, that would be funny to see UCLA knock them out of
So
this.
maybe that'll be
Now,
maybe a little cup.
Yeah.
By the way,
other thing, what about
did you know?
Pat
Did you know that?
Fitzgerald?
Do you know that on Wikipedia, Pat Fitzgerald? There you go. But I don't think he's a guy. Penn State would be an interesting one for him, but I don't know about any of the other ones. But
that would be great. You get
So-
the car wash guy coming in for Sandusky.
Yeah,
God.
that'd be great. So, but no, I wonder about. So by the way, on Wikipedia it says that that Utah won the national title in 2000. I was like, no, they did. It literally says that 2008 they won the 2009 Sugar Bowl over the Alabama Crimson Tide for Kyle Whittingham. That did not happen, Wikipedia. I think you're confused. That's why it's free. That's why it's the free encyclopedia.
Yeah, well, like I said, Signetti, Signetti and Joe Tiller. I'm sorry, but I can't make that comparison because what Signetti's done, you've taken the team that this is not arguable in D1, the worst team in football over the last 100 years is now, going to the CFP possibly 2 years in a row. I mean, I'm look, maybe Signetti never wins a national title. Only one guy can win it each year. But if you would have told me 2 years ago, if you bet $1, I'll give you $1 million that Indiana's going to go to the CFP 2 years in a row. I don't know if I'd have wasted the dollar.
No, there's no way. I would.
I don't understand why people are trying to diminish what he's doing because it's so. Is there another precedent in other than Ted Lasso taking the team all the way or whatever he did in soccer? I mean,
I don't know. I mean, there's never been really anything. I don't know. Has there been the only thing I would say and they were good, but they were good before. So, I mean, I know that maybe there's been guys who've taken teams to a different level, but this is really odd when you think about how bad they were. I mean, now they're literally I don't know. I hate to say this, but they're almost they spin like a blue blood almost,
yes.
Now,
well, hey, look, they got all that money free because the basketball program hadn't done a damn thing except for 1 year.
Yeah, no, it's funny. We always talk about Indiana being a blue blood. Now we're talking about Indiana basketball being blue. So I don't know. Yeah, I agree. St. Dominic's mentions Joe Tiller, and I think Joe Tiller did a great job at Purdue.
But he didn't take him to number 2.
No, I mean going to Rose Bowl, whatever. I mean, but it's not quite. What I don't know. That's pretty. I think.
Look, I have a hard time giving props to an Indiana coach. Okay, it's not easy as an Illini fan to do that, but goodness gracious,
he's good.
Signetti's a freaking amazing
he's
now.
Good. He's too arrogant for me, but he's good and he can back it up.
You know what? The only difference between Signetti is and every other college coach is he just vocalizes his arrogance.
He just says what he.
They're all arrogant. If you find me a humble college coach in any sport.
Lou Tepper.
The other ones hide it. They'll hide it, but you're right. Talking to them one-on-one, you're right.
Yeah.
Lou Tepper.
Lou Tepper was humble, and it showed. Oh, yeah.
Bruce Weber.
Bruce Weber was a humble guy, but I would give you that one. He got fired too.
Yeah, well,
so a couple of times. I love Bruce, but he got fired.
Signetti pulled a page out of the Lou Holtz playbook. He was doing the building up, UCLA today, and remember how Holtz used to make it sound like a Navy team that hadn't won a game in a year
exactly
was better than the '85 Bears.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I know they're 0-11, but I'm telling you what, they've been close in all 11 games. They've had a chance to win every one if they just, they're only 20 points off in each game.
Yeah.
So,
do you so if you're Penn State, do you call Nick Saban and see if you can get him out of retirement? I mean,
of course.
That would be huge for
Florida. Florida should call Nick Saban.
And the Big Ten.
I mean, I think everybody should. I mean, I would call Nick Saban.
Yeah.
I would have. We talked about that before. I'd make Nick Saban, Urban Meyer, all these guys tell me no before I heard anybody.
Because those guys. Before.
Yeah. So, but it's
Pete
wild. it's such a different world. Pete Carroll probably can't pay enough for him right now. He's in the NFL. He's living much easier lifestyle.
Yeah, it used to be the other way around. No college coach wanted to live that life. That's flipped.
Yeah, now it's the opposite. I don't know. I don't know who's the guy who's going to make everybody happy. Is it a guy like Kyle Whittingham? You hired an up and comer. Is it a guy like, he's not an up and comer really. He's been successful, but yet, he has more. He'll have more stuff available to him at a Penn State or something like that. So
get the Tulane coach and then get the Mensa to come over from Duke with you.
There you go.
I call Bill Belichick.
No, you would have. Bill Belichick would have answered when you called his girlfriend.
Yeah, well, no, Ked would be calling the girlfriend trying to get an interview. Like
Ked would say, "Are you a mom? Are you a mom yet? I only date moms." So, no, it's
and St. Dominic. You know what? He exists. He exists just to argue with me. I swear, as God is my witness. Look, if Signetti's been there one frickin' year, he went to the frickin' college football playoff. So yeah, he didn't win a Big Ten championship, and he didn't get a playoff win. I guess that's a fail. I mean, come on, man. I mean, that's ridiculous. Look, I love Bielema. But Signetti has done an incredible job there. And yes, he got a buttload of NIL money. And I would love to see somebody from Illinois talk Mark Andreessen and 4 or 5 of these guys in Silicon Valley to start dumping money in Illinois football, because I have no doubt, and Ked mentioned it, we've talked about it, you give Brett Bielema a $35 million roster, and he's going to coach circles around Ryan Day. That team is gonna beat the heck out of Ryan Day, because Ryan Day's teams aren't typically, he's born on third base.
That, but maybe his coaching style fits those guys.
It could be.
You know what I mean? I think there's a consent. You could say that. I mean,
but arguably he's had the best roster in football for 5 of the last 6 years, and he's got 1 title.
Yep.
I mean. But I think Bielema, if you gave him, now you're right though, would those type of players, would there be a difference in attitude and all that? I have no idea, but Bielema, Bielema had more money. He could compete.
Of course, I look at it. It's funny. Nick Saban coached those guys, and there's no question that Saban's one of the, he's a hard ass, right? I mean, there's no question. So, so they obviously can be done. I think Bielema is pretty good. I think he's a good football coach. I really do.
Yeah, so do I. It was interesting. I talked to Lauren Tate when I was up there for the Ohio State game, and I said, how do you compare Bielema to the other football coaches you've seen? And I always like to tell him in 60 years, which he gives me a sidelong glance. But and the interesting thing is, he said about Bielema, he said Bielema, he goes, Bielema's different than all these other guys because, Mike White had one eye on the offense. That was his baby. John Makovic had his eyes on the offense. I think Tepper tried to give him a game plan on his first game, and Makovic's like, you take care of it. Don't even talk to me about it. Yeah. Tepper did the defense. Turner did the offense. Nobody knows what Beckman did. Ron Zook recruited,
Beans and weeds, baby. Beans and weeds.
Yeah, I guess Beckman got caught in the cords on the sideline. Ron Zook recruited and water skied. But Tate brought up, he goes, Bielema runs this like you're supposed to run it. He's a head coach, and his people do their jobs, and he runs it like the top of an organization, which is kind of more what the Saban model was.
No question. He has his hand in everything that goes on. That's why a lot of people are like, we need to get rid of this offense coordinator, defense coordinator. Then get rid of the head coach. Because if he wants to get rid of him, he's going to.
Oh, yeah.
And but they're doing what he wants them to do. And that's just the reality of the situation. And that's what a good CEO does. You know what I noticed, though? Both Bielema has kind of taken whoever thought he'd run like almost like the spread, and run some like
that's the flexibility part of Brett Bielema that nobody knows about.
But that's what he's learned. Saban did too. Saban learned it. mean,
so what was it, 2013, something, 2014,
yeah,
all of a sudden?
these guys figure it out. I mean, because they're good. They want to win. And at the
Yep.
end of the day, they're going to do what it takes to win. And so that's the adjustment. So I'm happy with what Bielema has done at Illinois. Now, there's more out there. I think the upside is more than just where they're at. But can they compete with Ohio State and Michigan every year, Oregon?
Well, that's the challenge, right? You know, you look at Libertyville's got Brock Williams, the 5-star 2027 tight end. Is he even going to look at Illinois because of the pay scales? You know, he's being looked at by Georgia, Ohio State, and Texas. Well, if this kid's a money guy, he's probably going to go to Texas, and then, you know, he's got a choice, Ohio State and Georgia. But it'd be nice if Illinois had enough money to make those guys think twice. But it's people don't understand just how competitive it is from a financial standpoint at the very top for the best players.
Mike, you asked about the top. Well, you mentioned, Mark Andreessen. So I've never done this before. In all my years of having access to Google, the top 10 richest Illinois alums, there's a lot of guys out there with money. Why is it so difficult for Illinois to have guys?
Was I on there, Kat? Did you see me?
Yeah.
Did you see me on that list? I didn't.
I saw that list. You were down. You were down in a 9,433rd place.
Right there, baby.
I mean,
you were one ahead of me, so I was jealous.
They're loyal, but who's the guy from Michigan?
9,000th place.
Who's the guy from Michigan that
Larry Ellison?
Did he graduate from Illinois though?
No, he went for a year.
And then he gives, because his girlfriend's a Michigan fan, or something like that. But I'm looking at this list,
or whatever she is, yeah.
And I'm like, why in the world aren't they doing what these other programs are doing?
Well, it's not easy. I mean, you get to be a billionaire because you don't waste your money on dumb shit.
So how do other people do that?
That's why I'm saying it takes time, and I think it takes a focused effort. What Illinois needs is they need a salesperson with some talent and probably a little bit of a leash.
I nominate Mike Cagley.
But you need to be out in Silicon Valley every other week. There's almost like 15 to 20 billionaires out there, and you got to start building the relationships with them. And then the other thing is sometimes you have to say you're sorry for the dumb things that were done in the past that you have no control over. And I've followed some really crazy sales managers in my day, and I've had to go in there and say, hey, yeah, that was really stupid. I wouldn't have done it if I was here, but let's talk about the future, not the past. And Josh Whitman, he knows what he's doing. You get a Larry Geese, you get, Geese in there. I mean, that's a huge thing. And obviously the other thing I think is funny is people have forgotten how Shad Khan has been wonderful to the Illinois sports program, and nobody thinks about that anymore. But I mean, Shad Khan's been fantastic, but Illinois needs a few more if you want to go ahead and go toe to toe with Indiana.
They do.
They brought in the cash.
That better too, Mike. I don't think a lot of people realize that. When Geese gave all the money, I know, and I didn't read it myself. A lot of people thought, well, great, this is going to help buy players, but you can't. That's not what it's for. But that's what typically happens in Illinois. Whether they promote it or not, they have to have a couple sugar daddies to help. Because if you're going to see Indiana do this, and we know, because like I just said, I know people are probably Googling the top 10 list. There's people out there with a lot of money that can help this program, because I do think Brett's a good coach. I mean, I know he's a good coach. Can you imagine if he was able to go out there and get the best center or the best right guard or left?
Oh, yeah. Put it with his offensive line and his defensive capabilities, you give him the top talent. That's why it's always amazing to me why more of the offensive linemen, defensive linemen don't come. He's got a track record of putting guys in the NFL. Mm-hmm. If I was a 4-star or a 5-star and I saw what he was doing with 3 stars, I'd be like, dang, I got to go play for Bielema. But
now, Mike, there's money involved. So you could say that.
Exactly.
Like so you go to Indiana, and they're ranked second in the country and has a legitimate. They're going to make the college playoffs. And Illinois is 23rd. They lose, they're out, and then they have money. It's an easy.
Well, and here's another thing is this is really key from St. Dominic again. Indiana won with a bunch of James Madison dudes is not going to go to the NFL. Well, we'll see how many go there because only 3% of college players are going to play in the NFL. But what he did is very reminiscent of Jimmy Johnson. So Signetti was down recruiting at this lower level. He knows those players pretty well. So he knows which of those players could be good because he's got a good eye for talent. And he can get those guys for pennies on the dollar because, people are like, oh, James Madison, I'm going to go spend big money on this guy that's leaving Ohio State or Alabama or Georgia. And he's finding, difference makers at pennies on the dollar. And then he goes out and gets speed at wide receiver or gets what he needs with the quarterback duo of brothers. And so I do think it's very similar. And Signetti in 2 or 3 years is not going to have that knowledge of the lower level guys because he's going to be a Big Ten coach who won't see them. So Jimmy Johnson did the same thing his first 5 years in the NFL with the Cowboys. He couldn't miss in the draft. And then because he had recruited them all when he was in college, then when he got, to the Miami Dolphins, he didn't have that quote inside information, unquote. He became a normal NFL GM. He drafted just as bad as everybody else. So I think Signetti will have an advantage here probably for at least one more season of looking at guys down at the JMU level and saying, yeah, this guy can play because I was going to recruit him because I wanted him to go to JMU and he was really good, and I think that's a huge advantage for him. And this guy's smart, he takes advantage of everything. And I think Bielema does the same thing. I think one of the funny things about Bielema that Steve Stern brought up is Bielema's best defensive players have one trait that they all have in common if you watch their films in high school. They're always the guy who refuses to quit on a play and make tackle a guy 60 yards downfield because they keep going. And then Bielema gets them on, and that's, they're not 5 stars. So anyway, I think we've beat this one to death. Brad, any closing thoughts? And then Ked will let you kind of finish up.
Well, I'm just glad we could talk about the Illini Exhibition.
Yes, we went all over the board on this one.
We may have gotten off track. Yeah. So anyway,
that's nothing new.
Nothing new. So no, I'm excited to see the results of Florida, but honestly, it doesn't do much for me. I'm not that concerned about that game. I want to see what they do when the lights go on November 3rd. I'm very excited for that one with Jackson State. Obviously, that I think that's. I can't really get into basketball season until then. I mean, I'm just kind of watching and going through it. But and I think the other thing is this is the biggest game of the year. Every week it's a different big game, but Illinois' football game is the biggest game of the year against Washington. They're in a great spot if they win this game. I mean, like huge spot. Back in the day, we used to say, "Oh, they got 6 wins; they're bowl eligible." If they
not under Brett Bielema.
Now we're like, "Hey, they got 6 wins." 4 more and they get 10. So anyway, that's what
from a basketball standpoint, I want them to play well at Florida. I don't, to me, that's going to tell me a lot. But I also would like to have a full roster. I really want to see this roster put together. I think people who were able to watch the game yesterday from a national standpoint, I watched and listened to a lot of podcasts. They were impressed with what Illinois did yesterday, minus arguably the best player, which could be Stojakovic. So keep that in mind, I guess. But I do want to see how well they do. I'm excited to see them start. I'm excited for the women to start, to see all this new young talent that Shauna Green has. And Brad's right. We all talk about the biggest game of the year. And I pencil this game as a tough game going into the season. I will say this game will decide, I personally think, if they get to the college playoffs. They win Saturday. They're underdog. I think there's going to be a lot of points put on the board. Who can ever stop and get stops on defense is going to win this game because you're not going to stop either offense, I don't think.
Yeah, I was hoping the Washington quarterback would save his first bad game for the Illini. Unfortunately, he uncorked it a week early against a Michigan team that I don't think is that good.
Maybe it's a trend.
Yeah, let's hope so. But I'm not impressed with that Michigan team, but it looks like they're going to be cruising in, at maybe 10-2 or 9-3, which for having a first-year quarterback is pretty impressive. but I do think Illinois, this is you don't hear me say it because I'm always like, there's another week, but this is a huge game. It would be great to see Illinois do well. If you look at the record, I think Washington's 23-1 in their last 24 games at home. Ohio State put a whooping on them. The score wasn't nearly as the score was way closer than what the game was. Illinois is going to have to play well, but I do think their offense is clicking, and they should be able to put some points up, and it'll be a fun game to watch. Of course, folks, if you enjoy this, you can go to IlliniGuys.com. Feel free to go ahead and subscribe. It's $99 a year. You get all of our articles behind the paywall and the message boards, and that is something that is a nice additional value. It also gives us the dollars we need to put Brad on a plane so that he can get from Tampa to Orlando in a convenient and easy fashion. But we want to make sure that everybody everybody knows that we'd love to have the subscribers. And it's also, the message board is a great area where you can talk to Brad, Ked, Larry, Matt, Steve, myself. And it's a two-way street, not just a one-way street. And of course, we also encourage you to, go to IlliniGuys.com YouTube channel, subscribe and like our stuff there. And anytime you can forward along our social media. If you see we've got a video podcast or an audio podcast, please go out and share it on your feed, or go ahead and forward it to a friend who's an Illini fan or a Big Ten fan. That helps us greatly. And of course, every week you can listen to the Illini Guys Sports Spectacular on 20 plus stations across the state of Illinois. You can either go to the IlliniGuys.com page and hit the radio button to see what station in your area has it and what day, Friday or Saturday, and what time it's on. Or you can get the podcast and do it that way. And we usually have most of the show on video as well on the IlliniGuys.com YouTube channel. Anytime you can support us, we appreciate it. And of course, we will be back with halftime and end of game coverage at Washington. You can either see us be ecstatic and giddy or crying like little babies. We will see how that turns out with the game on Saturday. But until then, folks, we'll also have, I will have out the preview for Washington tomorrow night. So you'll be able to get up to date on what the Illini will be facing. Until then, folks, go Illini.